Breaking
news. The entire R&D department of a major company in Xi'an has been cleared out. They even managed to take everything in one go, without leaving a single screenshot behind. It was so fast. As for the company's products, they're not something regular consumers would buy. They're mostly purchased by government or state-run enterprises. I think you can guess which company I'm talking about. On April 6, well-known human rights activist Sheng Xue posted on X, revealing details from a source in China. The information disclosed that a monopoly company that produces surveillance equipment in China suddenly faced a devastating blow. Besides Sheng Xue, another person, identified only as Mr. X, disclosed more details to Sheng. He claimed that the Chinese surveillance system supplier Hikvision, including its CEO, senior R&D executives, and technicians, had been detained by the Chinese authorities for investigation. Over 300 people were arrested. It is reportedly linked to the capture of Venezuela's dictator Nicolas Maduro and the bombing of Iranian officials, as both those countries' surveillance systems were supplied by Hikvision. Mr. X mentioned that Hikvision's surveillance systems had vulnerabilities, which were exploited by the US and Israel. He added that China is now replacing all of Hikvision's surveillance systems. It said that both the Shanghai and Zhejiang R&D departments of Hikvision are also making arrests. The R&D department in Xi'an, which once had over 1,000 employees, was emptied overnight. Mr. X pointed out that the issue lies in Hikvision's surveillance systems being easily accessed by foreign entities to gather information. As a result, governments worldwide are clearing out Hikvision systems and even returning products. The products from Hikvision in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou are being considered for suspension, and the street surveillance systems in China still haven't been dealt with. Mr. X revealed the government's stance, noting that the key people, Hikvision's R&D heads and core technical staff, were taken away, and there's suspicion of spies within the company. Now, China's entire security system, including both Hikvision and Dahua, is investigating spies. He also found the situation ironic. He said Xi Jinping, the current head of the CCP, is like a scared bird now. He feels there's no one he can trust anymore. Look at his most trusted former foreign minister Qin Gang, vice chairman of the military commission Li Shangfu, and Liu Zhenli. They've all been accused of being spies for the US. There are even rumors now saying that Ma Xingrui might have ulterior motives and isn't loyal enough. Sheng Xue responded, saying, "I've always believed that Xi Jinping's way of ruling will eventually bring the Communist Party down from within." This shocking revelation has caused quite a stir, with the 50-cent army and internet trolls flooding the comment section to attack the blogger. However, more netizens, while shocked, have expressed that they can fully accept this reasonable and logical outcome. One netizen commented, "Chinese companies always do open-source packaging. With security like this, you don't need spies to turn it into a sieve. Isn't that normal?" Another said, "Any large company with hundreds of thousands of employees has spies, from individual user privacy to core technical secrets." Some netizens joked, this information is likely credible because most of China's security products come from Israel. Others added, "The Russia-Ukraine war ruined DJI, and now the US attacks Iran, taking down Hikvision and Dahua. If this continues, Chinese companies will be wiped out." Another user said, "The CCP concentrated surveillance technology in a few giant companies, allowing Hikvision to dominate. But once there's a problem, the whole security system collapses. Centralized control is the CCP's instinct, and centralized collapse is the inevitable cost. They're reaping what they sow." One user shared their personal experience, saying China's surveillance quality is extremely poor. "I originally thought China had taken over the global surveillance market, so I bought 4 high-end cameras from AliExpress. They turned out to be terrible. First, the video angle was very narrow, and they frequently malfunctioned. I had to go back and forth with the manufacturer on WeChat for a long time while troubleshooting. The software was terrible. Now I don't use them anymore, and installed a new set of American-made cameras." A major move by the Indian government a few days ago seems to align with the details of this exposure. Starting April 1, 2026, India officially banned the sale of CCTV devices from Chinese brands like Hikvision, Dahua, and TP-Link. New Delhi also launched a project to replace all Chinese cameras in the city. Parvesh Sahib Singh, India's Minister of Public Works, said that as part of a security system upgrade, the government would replace more than 140,000 Chinese-made cameras in the capital. This action responds to the government's recent directive and broader national security concerns. New Delhi has already installed over 270,000 CCTV cameras in 2 phases. Of these, 140,000 cameras installed between September 2020 and November 2022 were made in China. The remaining 130,000 cameras were installed between June 2025 and March 2026 and are not made in China. According to new regulations, starting in April, all network-connected cameras sold in India must pass STQC framework certification. Devices cannot have mixed passwords or hidden backdoors, and they must feature secure firmware update mechanisms, strong encryption for communication, and anti-tamper designs. Manufacturers are also required to provide the original source code for government lab review. Since Indian authorities have explicitly refused to certify products using Chinese chipsets or firmware, Hikvision, Dahua, and TP-Link have essentially been shut out without the need for any explicit ban. This mirrors the U.S. Federal Communications Commission's decision in 2022, which blocked the same brands, citing unacceptable national security risks. Currently, Hikvision, Dahua, and TP-Link control a significant share of India's CCTV market. This move will undoubtedly deliver a severe blow to these Chinese surveillance giants. One netizen commented that after the Iranian regime's top officials were wiped out, news spread that Chinese surveillance equipment played a key role in helping the U.S.-Israeli alliance. Shortly after, India announced a ban on Chinese cameras, and just days later, news broke that the surveillance giants were being thoroughly purged. It's hard to see this as just a coincidence. Another netizen boldly speculated that the recent public appearance of former Premier Wen Jiabao was linked to rumors that Xi Jinping had suffered a stroke and was hospitalized at Beijing's 301 hospital. It is believed that the anti-Xi forces within the party were using this opportunity to assert their influence. The cause of Xi's stroke was allegedly linked to the ongoing arrests and executions of his fellow autocrats. Upon learning that the culprit behind the purges was none other than the surveillance system, something on which he relied on for his rule, Xi Jinping developed a complex against the omnipresent cameras surrounding him. The immense fear and pressure led to the reemergence of his old illness. If the raid on Hikvision is true, it suggests that Xi Jinping narrowly escaped another close call with medical intervention. Once he regained consciousness, the first thing he did was target the surveillance cameras. This iron-fisted purge of surveillance giants exposes the most lethal paradox of a digital dictatorship system. In China, under the CCP's rule, more than 700 million surveillance cameras are spread across the streets, with 1 camera for every 2 citizens on average. This system, originally a massive expenditure aimed at achieving comprehensive social control, has now become an ever-present security risk in the minds of the higher-ups. Industry insiders analyze that the case of Mossad using traffic surveillance and digital vulnerabilities to target Khamenei sounded the alarm for dictators. Information technology, by its nature, has no loyalty. It only serves the underlying infrastructure and security flaws. When this vast database, originally intended to control the people and monitor society, is infiltrated and its location is reversed by external forces, the Skynet instantly transforms into the most accurate map in the hands of the attackers. This deep anxiety is triggering an absurd chain reaction. Observations show that for their own absolute safety, authorities are even considering dismantling or replacing some of the surveillance equipment previously deployed on the streets. When the power core realizes that technical control is not a one-way street and that highly centralized digital systems have inherent systemic risks, the only survival strategy becomes a purge. As the global leader in the surveillance market, Hikvision has extended its business to reach over 180 countries since its founding in 2001. By 2025, Hikvision held a 25.7% share of the global surveillance market, nearly twice that of Sweden's Axis, which ranks second. This company, focusing on smart Internet of Things and big data services, has not only provided the technical support for the CCP's rule, but also become its pioneer in exporting digital authoritarianism. However, this monopoly position is proving to be fragile. As governments worldwide clean up, return, and even suspend the use of Chinese-made surveillance systems, Hikvision no longer represents the pride of Made in China, but has instead become synonymous with technical backdoors and intelligence leaks. For Xi Jinping, this is an unsolvable fundamental contradiction. He needs dense surveillance to maintain control, but this highly centralized digital system has become the most vulnerable weakness that can be easily exploited by external forces. The massive purge targeting Hikvision's top management and R&D teams is in reality the dictator's frantic revenge against digital blowback. When Xi discovered that the surveillance system upon which he relied on for survival is no longer secure, and when cameras everywhere around him could be guns pointing at him, the entire security system was pushed towards paralysis. However, replacing the surveillance equipment is a huge and arduous task. During this period, China will have numerous surveillance blind spots and gaps in monitoring key figures. This represents a significant power hazard for Xi and adds more uncertainty to his situation. As is well known, in addition to the ubiquitous cameras across the cities, smartphones from mainland Chinese brands are also a key tool for surveillance. Amid the turmoil facing the surveillance giants, the CCP has not only strengthened monitoring on phones, but has even turned its sights on the large number of iPhone users in China. On April 3rd, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology issued a notice stating that through monitoring, it had discovered attackers exploiting vulnerabilities in Apple's terminal products, launching cyber attacks that could lead to information theft and system control. The affected range includes iPhone, iPad, and other Apple terminal products running iOS 13 to 17.2.1. The notice further explained, attackers use methods like SMS, email, or web-based poison attacks to lure users into using the Safari browser to visit web pages containing malicious code. By exploiting security vulnerabilities in the terminal device, attackers planted remote control Trojans, stole sensitive information, gained highest privileges, and took control of the affected devices. Ironically, this notice has not only failed to gain approval from Apple phone users, but has instead sparked a wave of doubt and mockery. Netizens shared their personal experience. About 5 or 6 years ago, I used to receive 4 or 5 harassment calls every day. One day, I got over 10. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the local police station, but they said it wasn't their responsibility. They also frequently received harassment calls. Then I called a hotline to lodge a complaint, and they recorded the numbers, saying they were all virtual numbers and they couldn't do anything about it. They suggested I download firewall software. I also emailed the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, but I never received a response. I've reached out to authorities and they said they couldn't do anything, so now I don't believe them. Another netizen replied, ever since I switched to an Apple phone and uninstalled all the officially recommended apps, the harassment calls stopped and everything went back to normal. Some netizens pointed out that the system on Apple phones has long since surpassed iOS 17, reaching version 26.4. They said, if you didn't specifically block system updates, your iPhone system version is definitely beyond iOS 17 now, so this notice is meaningless. Others mocked, is it unsafe or is it so secure that it can't be regulated? Honestly, if my information is stolen by foreigners, it hardly matters to me. But if my information is stolen by my fellow countrymen, that's when it becomes a big problem. One user stated, what phone doesn't steal data? We're already transparent people. We don't care anymore. Meituan has been massively invading computers, and the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology hasn't said anything. But when there's a small vulnerability in Apple's outdated system, they strike hard? Why is everyone focused on information leaks? The real concern should be when the system is controlled. Another netizen directly pointed out the authorities' malicious intent. The safer Apple becomes for the people, the less safe it is for the reactionary government. Experts point out that if China's surveillance industry suffers a devastating blow, it would have significant spillover effects. Aside from the psychological panic caused by a reduced ability to control the population, this would also greatly hinder another of the CCP's ambitions. In early March, the CCP released its 15th five-year plan, which spans 2026 to 2030. It designated the digital industry as a high-priority development direction, with artificial intelligence as a key focus. The plan proposes the full implementation of the AI Plus initiative, promoting the broad application of AI in sectors such as the economy, military, healthcare, and finance, as well as the development of offshore computing power facilities. infrastructure for cross-border data flows, and strengthening international digital cooperation, especially targeting the Global South. This plan continues the CCP's so-called AI superpower goal, first introduced in 2017. It aims not only to enhance industrial competitiveness, but also to serve its broader national strategy. On one hand, the CCP is pushing for digital transformation. On the other, it is continually strengthening its control over the internet and information space. In the early stages of internet development, the CCP used systems such as the Golden Shield project to block foreign information, restrict platforms like Google, YouTube, Wikipedia, and Facebook from entering China, and develop domestic alternatives. Under legal frameworks, these platforms are required to cooperate with national security and intelligence efforts, creating a highly centralized data control system. As AI technology advanced, it was increasingly incorporated into social governance and surveillance systems. Technologies such as facial recognition, voice recognition, and gait recognition were widely used for surveillance and viewed as important tools for the CCP to strengthen social control. With the advent of generative AI, the CCP quickly introduced regulations to require models to uphold the so-called socialist core values and undergo safety assessments, algorithm filings, and content reviews before going online. Researchers point out that this represents an extension of China's censorship system into an era of large models. At the same time, the CCP is accelerating the export of its digital model. Through companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent, it is expanding overseas markets and attempting to increase the dependence of developing countries on China's digital infrastructure and AI capabilities. This, in turn, allows China to push international rules that align with its interests. There are concerns that this model involves not just technological competition, but also the potential for information censorship, public opinion manipulation, and ideological export, especially in Belt and Road countries. Focusing on the key point, from a technical perspective, surveillance systems are not just simple security devices, but are the most critical data entry points and perception terminals within the CCP's AI system. Whether it's facial recognition, behavior analysis, or training large models for real-time decision-making, the underlying technology relies on massive, continuous, and annotatable data flows. The cameras scattered across cities and public spaces are the core nodes of this data source. It can be said that without the large-scale deployment of front-end cameras, it would be impossible to support the evolution and application of back-end algorithms. In this system, cameras are both the eyes and the extensions of data collection and power. Once this terminal system experiences security breaches or is infiltrated from the outside, it not only impacts technological capabilities, but also destabilizes the entire digital governance structure. This explains why cameras have an irreplaceable and central role in the CCP's AI strategy. With the banning of Chinese surveillance equipment in India and reports of surveillance giants suffering devastating blows at home, a significant signal is being sent. This is not just the end of Hikvision, but also the inevitable consequence of digital authoritarianism facing real-world backlash. A regime that tried to imprison 1.4 billion people using cameras has found itself trapped in this very system.